Time Walk with Me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Time Walk with me. I am the Time Walker, and in this video I wanted to talk about the recent drama between members of two popular Magic YouTube channels. Not really though, this is my vehicle deck commanded by Shorikai, Genesis Engine. This is not the only vehicle that can be your commander, but it's the only single-sided one that can, so that's pretty special. It came in a pre-con where it wasn't the primary commander, but people generally switched to it. It costs 2 generic, a white and a blue mana to cast. It's an 8/8, has crew 8, which means that if you tap creatures with a combined power of 8 or more, it becomes a creature. Its main ability though is to pay 1 mana of any color and tap it to draw 2 cards, discard a card, and create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token that can crew vehicles as if its power were 2 greater. This deck doesn't rely completely on Shorikai, but it's still good to have it in there. You might be able to think of better vehicles than these to put into this deck. I just use what I have on hand. But definitely give me any suggestions you feel like sharing. I do occasionally go and order cards that you guys suggest and put them into the decks, so yeah. Mighty Servant of Luco. This vehicle's ward makes it a little harder to target, and it helps you draw a bit too. Cosima, God of the Voyage / the Omen Keel. This is the only other vehicle that I know of that can be your commander, but that's just because one of its sides is a legendary creature. Still, you can cast it from the command zone as the Omen Keel, which allows you to steal lands from your opponents. Late in the game, this might actually kinda help them, so at that time you'll probably want to cast it as Cosima. Cosima? Cosima? I don't know, I look at it and I see Cosima. I could be way off though. Let me know in the comments if you think I am. Aerial Surveyor. This can help you ramp a bit when it attacks, which is nice in white. Imposter Mech. If your opponent has a cool creature, you can copy it with this. It can even copy their commander. Parhelion 2. For 8 mana, you get a potential to deal 13 flying damage per attack. Colossal Plow. This is more white ramp, and it's especially good if it survives the attack. Sky Sovereign, Console Flagship. This deals damage to an opponent's creature or planeswalker as it enters the battlefield, and extra damage when it attacks. Weatherlight. This helps you get more helpful artifacts into your hand. Mindlink Mech. This is nice to use with a small creature that would benefit from being bigger and flying. Mobilizer Mech. For a low crew cost, this turns another vehicle you control into a creature. That's very nice considering the commander of this deck has a very high crew cost. Mech Titan Core. This card is so much fun I had to include it in here. It creates a 10/10 Megazord with a ton of helpful abilities. Reckoner Bankbuster. This card is nice if you need some quick cash and you live near a bank, although maybe you shouldn't rob the bank you live near. Surge Hacker Mech. This has a nice ETB effect that can fry a problem creature. Mysterious Limousine. Whisk your opponent's creatures away in this vehicle or take your own creatures back from creature thieves. And Unlicensed Hearse. This is some nice graveyard hate that you can use without even crewing it, and it gets pretty big over time. For the pilots, I found creatures that have tap or untap triggers. That way they can be used without having to attack. God-Favored General. When this untaps, you can pay 3 mana for 2 chump blockers. Airy Worshippers. When this untaps, you can pay 3 mana for 2 flying chump blockers. Arbiter of the Ideal. This gives you free stuff whenever it untaps. Sphinx's Disciple. This draws you cards when it untaps. Sanwell Avenger Ace. This creature is protected while you attack with an artifact creature, and it helps you cast more vehicles when it taps. Scaretiller. I might put in something like Strip Mine to use with this creature's ability to give you back a land from your graveyard when it taps. As it is, I don't do anything that evil with it, but I really should because I am that evil. Samite Herbalist, or Herbalist. This gives you life and a Scry 1 when it taps. Daring Thief. This lets you trade your 1/1 pilots for Eldrazi or dragons or whatever whenever it untaps. I think they meant for this to be difficult to do because normally you have to attack in order to tap a creature. Surge Spanner. This lets you cast a boomerang whenever it taps. It can return any permanent to its owner's hand, even a land. Mistmeadow Vanisher. With this you can blink your stuff or your opponent's stuff. Fallow Sage. This draws you a card when it taps. Ghostly Pilferer. This can draw you extra cards when it untaps and you pay some mana, but it also draws you cards when an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand. Kotori, Pilot Prodigy. This makes your vehicles a lot easier to crew by reducing crew costs, and in case a vehicle already had a lower crew cost, it doesn't take that away, it just gives it an additional crew cost. Stonybrook Schoolmaster. This gives you 1/1 Merfolk Wizards when it taps. And Veteran of the Depths. The more this crews vehicles, the better it gets at it. These cards are here to untap Shorikai or whatever else needs untapping. Chakram Retriever, Manifold Key, Vizier of Tumbling Sands, Voltaic Key, and Unwinding Clock. Don't think I really need to explain too many of these. I could have picked cards that counter spells and destroy things, but that would be too easy. Instead, I went a more annoying route. Boomerang. Returning your opponent's lands or mana rocks to their hands can negate their ramp and really mess with their tempo. Echoing Truth. This card can take out large numbers of token creatures as long as they all have the same name. Blink of an Eye. Archmage's Charm. This versatile spell can counter something, make someone draw 2 cards, or gain control of something small like a Soul Ring, a Mana Crypt, or a Phyrexian Dreadnought. Aether Spouts or Ether Spouts, I think it's actually supposed to be Ether Spouts. This can really save you in a pinch, or it can save someone else so they can owe you a favor. Compelling Deterrence. Capsize. This can repeatedly bounce stuff, including lands. Wipe Away. This can bounce lands or any other permanent, and it can't be responded to without a special action like turning a morph creature face up. And Rescind. So you can tell that I mostly put in bounce spells that can deal with lands. You might not always want to, but what if you always did? Ethereum Sculptor. This ramps you by paying for 1 mana of all your artifact spells' mana costs. The Might Stone and Weak Stone. This card has a cool ETB effect and it taps for 2 mana that can only be used to cast artifacts or pay ability costs. Marble Diamond. Gilded Lotus. This is a rarity, a mana rock that taps for more than half of what it costs to cast. Ornithopter of Paradise. Worn Power Stone. Sten, Paranoid Partisan. This can make any of your non-creature spells cheaper to cast, and you can blink it to choose something different. Vidalcan Engineer. This helps you cast artifacts or play artifact abilities, though it does suffer from summoning sickness. Soul Ring. Solemn Simulacrum, and Sky Diamond. Dig Site Engineer. You'll end up with a lot of artifacts, so this gives you a beefy creature for 2 mana every time you cast one. One with the Machine. This can potentially draw you 8 cards. Anything over 2 is pretty good for this mana cost, really. Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle. This can help you bring back dead pilots since they tend to be small and cheap. Lost in the Maze. This is here to protect your pilots while they're tapped, but its ETB ability is nice and annoying too. And since it has flash, you can use it to protect something. Research Thief. Surprise card draw could be helpful. Tamio's Logbook. 1 mana to draw a card is a pretty good rate. Argivian Restoration. This can get you a nice discount on an expensive artifact that you discarded with Shorikai. Thousand Moons Smithy / Barracks of the Thousand. This can get you a bunch of beefy creatures. And Unstable Glyph Bridge / Sand Swirl Wanderglyph. This starts out as an interesting board wipe that won't touch your vehicles unless they've been piloted. Do not pilot them before casting this though. But once it transforms, it puts you in quite a pillow fort by making people choose between attacking you and casting spells. We got Islands and Plains, of course. Nimbus Maze, Port Town, Idyllic Beachfront, Glacial Floodplain, Command Tower, Lonely Sandbar, Prairie Stream, Reliquary Tower, Secluded Steppe, Tranquil Cove, Mech Hangar, This allows you to crew a vehicle for 3 mana plus tapping this land, which would otherwise provide 1 mana, for a total of 4 mana. That means that you can have an 8/8 on turn 5 or sooner. Roadside Reliquary. This deck only contains 1 enchantment, but the sacrifice ability is still worth using for 1 card late in the game. And Hengegate Pathway / Mistgate Pathway. So there we have it. That is my Shorikai Genesis Engine deck. What do you think about that? Tell me how I can improve it. Tell me how it's the perfect deck. Whatever you think. And I'll see you next time.